Friends, today a very interesting subject: governance, public policy, governance, and government. Sometimes we confuse these two terms. So, let's first define what is governance and what is its relationship with government. So, when we say governance, so the word governing, that is both in governance and government. So, govern means to steer. Etymologically, the word govern, that is taken from to steer. For example, there is a boat and you are steering it, you are managing it, you are rowing. So, when there are different affairs, there are different processes, and we conduct those procedures with some result in our mind, so then that is called governing. Now we can do it with governance and we can do it with government. What's the difference between these two? Government is, a group of people when they govern. And governance is thus the act of government. What the government does, that is called governance. Government itself is not sufficient. If a state has government, because government is the fourth part of a state, there are around 200 states in the world, and each state has government. Other than the government, each state has territory, people, and sovereignty. These are the four fundamental elements of each state. So government is the collection, the group of those people, the totality of those people when they govern through legislature, executive, and judiciary. These three are then the pillars of any government. And what these three pillars, what the government as a whole does, the action, that action is called governance. And how a government does governance, how this act is given practical form, that is by public policy. Public policy is the course of action for a government for governance. How we do governance, for example, how we govern, we must have some policy, we must have some course of action for public, for people, for the population, for the citizens of the country. How we will manage the affairs of the people of a country, of a state. So we must have a course of action. We must have methodology. We must have a set of procedures, policy, strategy, and that policy for the public, not for private organization, not for a business organization, but for public of the people of the country. That is called public policy. That course of action for the people of a state, that is called public policy. And who does this thing? Who are the people who does it? So the members of parliament, the politicians, they come together, they make a parliament, a legislature, they make rules, they make constitution, they make policy, and that policy is implemented by bureaucracy. The form of bureaucracy is public administration. Bureaucracy means etymologically, the word bureaucracy is taken from bureau and cracy, the government of office, office bearers. Some people, sarcastically call it babu crazy, clerk crazy. The people who are like secretaries and government officers, when they come together, that is called bureaucracy. Now, whether bureaucracy is necessary or not, historically, like Max Weber, consider bureaucracy to be a dynamic organization, organization with a lot of energy, and it is essential that the public policy must be implemented. What the people, what the public need, so their needs must be fulfilled by bureaucracy. And bureaucracy is the non-political part of government, because the members of parliament, they are elected, are selected, but bureaucracy is more permanent form of government. The other day we discussed that whether bureaucracy or public administration should be political or apolitical. So there is a new theory that even bureaucracy must be loyal to the government of the day, and they must agree with the political party, with their ideology. Otherwise, then they will not be performing their duties wholeheartedly. So this is a new concept. In many countries, like I was in Venezuela, in many countries, all of their bureaucrats come from the political party of their time. So that is not a permanent body of officials. When the government change, so then they also change their bureaucracy. So there are different models. I will deliver a special lecture on bureaucracy, so we will discuss in detail. Today, my purpose is to introduce the basics of governance, public policy, and bureaucracy. So coming back to the government, when we talk about politics, so in politics, there may be the government side and there may be the opposition. There may be antagonistic kind of politics. For example, the government may propose one line of action, one public policy, one course of action, while the opposition may not agree with that. So this settlement of affairs and this discussion of making policies and rules and legislation, this process is called politics. So politics is not public policy, and politics is not governance, and governance is not government itself. Government is the body, the people, and the action, that is called governance. And governance is not politics, because in politics there is an antagonistic element. It may be opposed, but governance, it must be in a neutral way, in an objective way. So the people, the end result must reach to the people, trickle down. It must come to the people at the grassroots. A citizen living in a village, in a town, must feel the impact of governance. So this is why we say fair governance or good governance. Just the presence, the mere presence of government is not sufficient. What matters, that is the action of the government, which is governance. That's why in many countries, in many African countries and Asian countries, there are governments, but there is no governance. So the main challenge, that is governance, that is not government. Everywhere there is government. If there is a state, there will be people, population, there will be sovereignty, there will be territory, land, and there will be a government. That government may be democracy, that may be monarchy, that may be dictatorship, that may be military rule, different forms of the government. But what that government does, that is called governance. Sometimes a benevolent dictator does better governance than a democratically elected government. So, try to understand this concept, that what matters, that is governance. And our focus must be on governance, not on the form of government. Although there can't be better government than democracy in the modern times, it may be the end of the history. Or maybe, in future, maybe like in China, they have communism in their political system, that is their politics, that is based on communism, not on democracy. But their market economy, that is private sector. So maybe, a time comes that the people say, no, we need strong government. What we need, that is governance, not what kind of government that is. So the concept of governance is of paramount importance, very, very significant. We must try to understand this thing. Now, when we say about the governance, so we differentiate it from the government. That already I discussed. When we come to the forms of the governance, so when in any state, the government takes the form of governance, but governance is not limited only to state. There may be governance in a private organization. There may be global governance. There may be public-private partnership, PPP, public-private partnership, where the public and private sectors come together and they conduct the government or the policies at their time, and we call this model governance, public-private partnership governance. So there may be global governance on the whole world, like United Nations or other level. Regional organizations may also do their governance. So it depends the levels where from. But the good governance is when the people, the public policy is made in a way and it is implemented by the bureaucracy that a common citizen get benefit out of the governance process. So when there are three tiers which are very important, we must understand. One is the government. The second is profit-based organizations, business organizations, and the third, that is non-profit organizations, which is the social part. And all these things, the most important aspect is economics. Economics is very much involved in governance. New classical economics. New classical economics are transaction cost economics. When the people, for example, World Bank, for World Bank, what is governance? Governance is the set of actions for development. When there is a conflict or when there is many people, they come together, many factors, many sectors, they come together and they make a public policy for the purpose is development. So that is World Bank. Everybody defines governance according to its own priorities. There is not a one like universally accepted definition of governance. So for World Bank, development, that is the goal of governance. Maybe for another organization like IMF, that is the financial stability, that is the growth of the economy, GDP of the economy, gross domestic growth. That may be the main purpose of governance. So, and maybe for a socialist country, the social well-being of the people, that is the product of governance. So we have these three tiers: government, which take taxes from the people, and those taxes are used for the public welfare, for the social welfare, and then the people, they have health, education, safety, security, they have communication system, they have a legal system, they have economic system. So that is the government. And then we come to the private business sector, where the main purpose is profit, money, factors of production. New classic economics is too much involved there, demand and supply. So that is the profit. And then the non-profit, there are many charity organizations where there are board of directors and trustees. They also govern. We also call it governance bodies. Maybe a state bank of a country has governance body. The action taken by that group of people is also called governance. Now, in government, governance is more important because in all these organizations, the most important organization is government. Because without government, there may be anarchy. There will be no government. So there will be chaos. There will be disorder. Okay, that's why we need politicians. Politicians may be necessary evils, but we can't do without politicians. We hate politicians, but the real change can be brought only by politicians. Education, that is important. So this is my second lecture on governance. You may listen to the first lecture also, where we discussed different forms of governance. And the most important people after politicians is bureaucracy. And bureaucracy, sometimes the people criticize bureaucracy because bureaucracy is lethargic, bureaucracy is passive, bureaucracy is very like inhuman. They don't have humanity because they are bound by a lot of rules and regulations, a lot of red tapeism. So when you make a dynamic, energetic bureaucracy whose main goal is delivery of the services, that the common man, the common person feels that the government is doing their their action, which is governance, then that is the real test of bureaucracy. Now, how we can improve bureaucracy when they are well trained, when they are well paid, and they have proper skills. Proper skills. What is skill? Skill is the action when the result is guaranteed. When we are sure about the result of an action, that is called skill. For example, a plumber comes, so we are sure that he will fix the problem. So if there is a skillful bureaucrat officer, so then the problems will be resolved. And if that person is not skilled, as in Persian we say khufta ra khufta ki kunat baydar, that one person sleeping can't awake another person who is asleep. When the bureaucrat, the officer, the official himself or herself is not skilled, is not expert, doesn't have expertise, not professional, so how we can expect the delivery of services? So they must be well trained, well educated, and they must be a kind of dynamic, energetic, enthusiast kind of person, that they take interest in the performance of duties, and then the people at large, they will feel that the governance is going on very on proper lines, and then they will be happy, they will be satisfied, and there will be overall contentment in society. And that is the goal of the government, that the people must feel happy and satisfied. So this whole things, and how this will be done, if we have an effective public policy with efficient bureaucracy. So all these things are interrelated. We start from the state, government, the action of the government, that is governance. Who does this action? They are called bureaucrats and politicians. And the end result that must reach to a common person, a common citizen. So governance is a very interesting subject to study, and a very easy subject. It is a very commonplace kind of subject, because we see in our society that how the governments, they perform their actions in the shape of the governance. And when we go to the global governance system, so then we take charge of, for example, environmental governance, internet governance, information technology governance. There are different forms of governance that we must consider. But in this whole game, in this whole thing, what we consider important, that is economics, that is capital, well-being of the people, happiness of the people, wealth creation, job creation, employment, income, poverty alleviation, social resolution of socio-economic problems, agriculture, industry. All these things are involved in the form of government. Tax collection, and then use of the tax collected money in proper way. So this whole process, that is called governance. So those people who are like want to be bureaucrats and officers in their careers, they must know what is governance, because they are part of the government. Although they are not part of the legislature, they are part of the executive part of the government. And then we have judiciary. But when all these come together, then we call it governance. That action is called governance. While the body of people who is for governance, that body is called government, which is the part of the state. So this is the whole hierarchy. Once we are clear about this hierarchy, then we can understand what is governance. So I hope you have understood the concept of governance. If there are questions and other related stuff, so please share, don't hesitate, try to understand, try to love this process. Then I'm sure that it's reading, it's study that will be not boring and you will love it. We will remain in touch. Thank you very much.